The first time Claire Donovan opened the door to the dimly lit restaurant, she felt a tremor of panic coil through her chest. Her reflection in the glass, simple blouse, pressed jeans, hair pulled back tightly, felt like a mask she'd been forced to wear for far too long. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not tonight. Not with him. Not in this world of polished smiles and whispered influence. The world had always told Claire she had to hide. That her scars, both visible and invisible, were unacceptable. She took a deep breath, trying to summon courage, hoping the young man waiting for her didn't see through the fragile armor she had built around herself. Before she could step inside, a small voice in her mind whispered a familiar warning: people will never see the real you. Not now. Not ever. But still, she crossed the threshold. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, if you believe that people can see beyond the masks they wear, take a moment to like this video, comment below, share, and subscribe. You never know whose life a simple click might touch. He was already waiting at the corner table, casually poised, yet there was an undeniable weight to him. His presence demanded attention, not through arrogance, but through quiet, almost invisible authority. Claire's heart thumped against her ribs as she approached. She noticed the tailored suit, the polished shoes, the way his hands rested lightly on the table as though every move had a purpose. She swallowed, trying to steady herself. "I'm not who you think I am," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not daring to meet his eyes, she stared at the grain of the oak table. She had rehearsed these words countless times in front of a cracked mirror, but now they felt small, inadequate. She had imagined countless ways this evening could go wrong, but the truth was, she had never felt so vulnerable in her life. Vulnerability had always been her greatest enemy. He smiled faintly and leaned closer. "I know," he said, almost as if he had been waiting for her to confess. Claire froze. There was something in his tone, a soft certainty, that shook her. It wasn't pity, it wasn't judgment. It was recognition. Recognition of someone who had been hiding in plain sight. Someone whose pain had been invisible to most, but whose strength had always been quietly radiant. The young man, Jackson Reed, as she remembered from the text message, wasn't just a CEO, he was a man who carried his own battles. Claire didn't know how she knew that, but somehow, she did. And suddenly, the weight of her own fears felt slightly lighter. The conversation started awkwardly, each of them circling around superficialities, favorite books, weekend plans, childhood memories. But beneath the surface, something deeper stirred. Claire found herself revealing details she hadn't spoken aloud in years. About the night she had lost everything, the fire that consumed her parents' home, the foster homes that followed, the endless nights spent questioning if she was enough. Jackson listened. Truly listened. Not with the polite nods of someone making small talk, but with the full weight of his attention. And when she stopped, thinking she had overstepped, he didn't recoil. Instead, he leaned back and whispered words that made her chest ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. "You are more than your past. More than their stories about you. You are enough." The restaurant faded around them, the other diners blurring into soft shapes. For the first time in her life, Claire felt seen. And yet, even as her heart began to hope, her mind screamed warnings: this is too good to be true. He's a CEO. You're a girl who barely makes rent. You're broken. Over the next weeks, they met repeatedly, sometimes over coffee, sometimes over quiet walks in city parks. Claire's walls began to crumble, slowly, painstakingly. She started to believe, just a little, that maybe someone could care for her despite the pieces of her that felt jagged and unfixable. Yet, as her hope grew, so did the fear. Fear of rejection, fear of exposure, fear of the past she had worked so hard to bury. Every time Jackson's hand brushed hers, every time he looked at her with that steady, unwavering gaze, her thoughts spiraled: he doesn't know the full truth. What happens when he does? Will he leave? Will he call me a liar? It was a Thursday evening when everything came to a head. Claire had promised herself she would be honest. She had rehearsed every word, every nuance, and yet, as she sat across from Jackson in his sleek high-rise apartment, the city lights painting golden streaks across the floor-to-ceiling windows, she found herself faltering. "I can't keep pretending," she said finally, voice quivering. "I'm not who you think I am. There's so much you don't know, about me, about my life." Jackson reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Claire, look at me," he said softly. And she did. And in his eyes, she didn't see judgment. She didn't see shock or disappointment. She saw truth. He knew her. "I know," he whispered again. "And it doesn't matter." The words hit her like a wave, crashing against walls she thought had stood for decades. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from relief, not from happiness, but from the sheer, overwhelming release of fear. Someone, after all these years, understood. Someone saw her scars not as marks of shame, but as signs of survival. In the weeks that followed, Claire began to share more of herself, not just with Jackson, but with the world. She wrote, tentatively at first, stories about her past, her struggles, and her tiny triumphs. She volunteered at shelters, helping girls who had grown up like she had, showing them that their past didn't define their future. And Jackson was always there, silently supportive, offering guidance, encouragement, and unwavering belief in her potential. Life didn't become perfect overnight. There were days when her past haunted her with sharp clarity, when old fears clawed at her like shadows she couldn't outrun. But now, she had someone who stood beside her, reminding her that the darkness she carried was not her entirety. That love, genuine love, could exist even in the presence of pain. Months later, they returned to the same restaurant where they had first met. Claire had come a long way, yet she still felt a flutter of nerves. But as Jackson's hand found hers across the table, she realized that courage had grown in its place. Courage not to hide, courage to speak, courage to believe that life could hold more than she had imagined. "I never thought I'd find someone who saw me," she said quietly, her fingers intertwined with his. "And yet, here we are," Jackson replied, his smile gentle but filled with conviction. In that moment, Claire understood a profound truth: it wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about hiding flaws or rewriting history. It was about finding someone who saw the real you, embraced it, and chose to walk beside you anyway. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of understanding and love, please take a moment to like, share, and comment. Let the world know that no one is ever beyond hope, and no heart is too broken to heal. Comment below what part of Claire's journey resonated with you the most. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Because in the end, it isn't the masks we wear that define us. It's the courage to let someone in, to show who we truly are, and to find in that vulnerability the possibility of love, forgiveness, and redemption. Claire had found hers. And maybe, just maybe, so can you.